Hey, welcome back to the Motorcyclist Podcast. This is where we talk about motorcycles and what makes them great. As always, the topics on this podcast always change. What doesn't change is two-wheeled fun. In this episode, we're going to talk about what we feel are the best countries to ride a motorcycle in. The three of us in this podcast have traveled all around the world riding motorcycles, and we're going to talk about what our favorites are and why we think that they're great places for everyone to go visit. And then we're going to actually cover a few places that we don't think are so good. But before we get started, we got to make introductions. As always, we've got editor Adam Wahid. We've got our staff photographer, Jeff Allen. And you've got myself, executive editor, Justin Dawes. So we always start with what everyone's been riding. So let's talk about this week. Adam, what have you been riding?
This past week, I've been riding Honda's 2025 CRF 450 RX. Just kicking up some dirt off-road. We had some rain in the American Southwest a couple weeks ago now, so the dirt is drying up. It's still pretty good and great time to get outside and do some dirt biking.
Radical. I think like that RX bike is such an awesome choice for people that maybe do all types of different riding, because you could take it to the motocross track. You can go ride off-road with it. You can go race, closed course cross country races with it. Like, it's just a solid all around bike, and I think it's a good value for what it is.
I totally agree. There's really nothing that bike can't do. Maybe it's a little bit softer edge than the Yamaha equivalent, but that's not necessarily a bad thing just because it adds to its versatility.
Yeah, or the KTM as well, right? Like you've got a lot of manufacturers going on this route now where they have the off-road version of the motocross bike with an 18-inch rear and a kickstand and some softer suspension, and they're just like solid, smart choices.
Yeah, especially for people who, they're not like just going to the track. They're not doing just one segment of dirt biking. They like to do a bunch of different dirt biking. Not everyone can afford to have multiple bikes in their garage. So, the 450 RX is a good, one solution for a variety of different applications.
Yep, solid.
Yeah, that's great, because we all have friends who are like the moto friends, and then we have other friends who are the off-road friends. And if you got something that can just go everywhere, it's just extra time in the saddle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's a good, solid choice. I think if I was, like you said, if you could have only one dirt bike in your garage, that type of dirt bike is a solid choice for sure.
Yeah, and most importantly, it has a kickstand.
Yeah,
which comes in very handy.
Yeah, when you're taking a break, and I take lots of breaks. All right, Jeff, what about you? What have you been riding?
I've been riding the Husqvarna 801 Vitplin. It's, I wasn't really on board with the Vitplin when it first came out, just the styling of it. But this one it's still very similar. I don't know, or maybe it's grown on me, but I like it quite a bit. It's a nice motorcycle. That 801 platform is nicer than the previous 701 platform for that bike.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely making it into a parallel twin, makes it a much better motorcycle for longer distance riding than that single. I really loved that single though. The 701, like that LC4, 600 and whatever cc it is, 690. Like, I love that engine. It's so torquey and fun. But I think we talked about it a while ago. I rode one of those 701 Vitpillins to Morocco, which may or may not be on my list. And man, that it was brutal riding that thing long ways.
Don't get me wrong. I like the 701, but I prefer the 701. I preferred in the Supermoto.
Yeah.
Than the Vitplin. So
yeah, for sure. Right on. Well, I had the flu this week, but before I got the flu, I got to ride in what I think is one of the greatest places in the world to ride. But it's not on this list because I don't want everyone coming here and clogging up my trails. But it's not a well-guarded secret, but I live in Costa Rica a lot of the year, and I did one of the raddest trail rides I've done in a long time on a 350. KTM of mine, and the rain stopped a bit. The dirt's nice and tacky, and we did some just insanely gnarly trails that were rad that ended in going for a swim in a river that was awesome. And maybe that's why I got the flu. Maybe I got sick from the cold water. The water was very cool and refreshing. But
how are those tree ruts when they're all covered in moisture and mud?
Yeah, actually, when it's wet, it's tough. It's very, very tough. This last time I rode, whichever was that, like a few days ago, it wasn't so wet, so it was much easier for me. But the boys I ride with here, and girls actually, they are excellent riders in the mud, and I feel that I'm a pretty solid off-road rider. And when I moved here and started riding with everybody in my group, I was pathetic. So now it's good.
On the struggle
really
bus.
A super struggle bus. Like I had like the first 3 rides I did here with people, I actually had to have someone ride my bike up a hill, and I haven't had to do that since I was 8 years old.
Yeah, it must be tough. I've ridden with you. You're a good rider, so that must be difficult.
Yeah, I didn't know the skill. I just didn't have the skills. I'm from Southern California and Nevada, so dirt is completely different here, and if you don't know how to ride in slick stuff, you learn it real quick.
Yeah, is there a lot of clay in the soil down there?
Yeah, it's a lot of clay. It varies. There's like volcanic stuff, and there's clay, and it can vary wildly very quickly, like on the same trail, and even on the same section of trail. One side of the trail can be clay, and one side can be loamy, muddy dirt. So
interesting.
Yeah, but it's Costa Rica is an amazing place to ride too, but there's not as much variety as some of the other places that we're going to talk about on this list. So I wouldn't add it to the top of the list of places to ride a motorcycle, other than the scenery is great and the hard enduro riding is awesome. But the road network is pretty variable. You have some really nice roads, but you have some really, really bad roads, and you have to deal with the rain all the time. So if you don't like riding in the rain, this ain't the place for you. So we are going to talk about our favorite countries here, but we're not going to talk about the USA. We're going to do a separate podcast on places in the USA to ride, because clearly the USA is on the top of all our lists. I mean, there's so many places in the US to ride, right?
So much different stuff too, depending on what bike you're on.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend hours and hours and hours just on US places to ride. So we're going to save that for a separate podcast. And I'm calling Moab right now. That's mine. You guys don't get to pick it. So we'll talk about that later. But before we get started, in the comments down below, tell us where your favorite place to ride is. And if you've traveled to other countries and ridden in other countries, and what you think. Let us know. Maybe there's some places that we haven't checked out yet that we should, right? So we're gonna kick this list off. We've each got 3 countries, and we're saving our favorite country for last. So we'll get it started. I want to start with Adam and his first pick for a great country to go motorcycle riding in.
Well, my first pick, which is my 3rd favorite, would be the country of Germany. And I guess you guys can probably guess why.
Yeah.
The Autobahn.
Yeah. The Autobahn. Heck yeah, man.
A road where you can really stretch the legs of a motorcycle and not have to worry about a pair of flashing lights behind you.
Unless it's a high horsepower Benz behind you flashing their brights for you to get out of the way.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, if you're cruising at 120 in the fast lane and 120 might be too slow for some people, yeah, they're going to definitely track you down and flash you with the brights to make you get out of the way.
For sure.
Yeah, it's definitely surprising. I've had it happen to me where you're like, what in the hell is this guy?
Yeah, just right on by.
Yeah. But the level of courtesy, I mean, that just kind of shows you too, like the level of road courtesy and respect is very high in that country. You know, people are aware of their surroundings and what's coming up behind them, and they're not like typical, you know, United States drivers where they're hogging up the left lane and making cars pass them on the right, you know, which speeds up things.
Yeah, they
they're
are
very
very, very
disciplined.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Very good drivers in Germany. Very good drivers. So it's quite good. And if you're in the wrong spot, though, they will let you know it.
Yeah. And just the roads are so bowling ball alley smooth that it's just nice being able to go at triple digit speeds for miles and miles and miles comfortably.
Absolutely. And there's other stuff to Germany though that's just not you know, the bowling ball roads, but on Autobahn. But you get off the Autobahn, man, there are some really epic roads all around Germany.
Yeah. I've ridden through the Black Forest. That's pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
Their cakes are good there, I heard.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of diversity in roads. Like you could go in the mountains, you can go towards, you know, the Alps and Switzerland. There's a lot of different countryside to be explored. And a lot of times, I mean, obviously you go to a big city, there's a lot of population, but you get away from a big city and there's no one on the road. It's just you and your motorcycle, and that's that.
Yeah, very, very true.
Yeah, all of Europe. It's so nice that you can just connect village to village with all these back twisty roads and come to a little village where there's a nice coffee or lunch or something, and just over and over again all day long.
Yep.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, Germany. There's multiple reasons, but the Autobahn is definitely something to be experienced. So I say, yep, go to Germany for sure. Yep. So my first one is a place I talked about on a podcast a while ago, which was Morocco. Morocco has some really awesome riding, and you feel like you're adventuring the whole time you're doing it, right? No matter what you're riding, you feel it's just a wilder rural place, but it's not that far from Europe. Like you could get rent a bike in Europe, hop on a ferry, and within a couple hours you could be in Morocco from Spain. And you know, there's all kinds of riding there, everywhere from like Erfoud area where KTM and Honda and everyone does their rally training. So you've got like desert and mountains, and you've got sand dunes because you're right on the edge of the Sahara there. Like really, really fun off-road riding. But then you can go to like northern part of Morocco and go ride all the coastal roads on the top and along the west coast, and you can get in some really cool places up there. You know, like we rode to a place called Chefchaouen one time, which is a city that is up in the mountains. So it has amazing curving roads going all the way up. I mean, you are kind of dodging slow trucks and bad drivers, but still the roads are pretty solid. And you get up there and it's just amazing scenery. And the city, every building, the street, the ground, everything is painted a shade of blue, from light blue to dark blue. And it's just really, really fun place to go check out and walk the back streets and take a lot of photos, and then hop back on the road and take another mountain road down. And you would think Morocco is all desert, but it's not. You get up in those areas and you're up in the mountains where it's cold and there's pine trees and there's waterfalls and rivers, and it's really awesome. So have you guys ridden there before?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I was in Morocco also riding. I went to a lot of the same spots that you just mentioned, and like you saying, it's an adventure. I remember thinking for us, for Westerners, everything is different to our eye. It is just everything you look at is sort of new to your eye, and that was one of the things I really, really liked about it, and just loved it.
Yep.
Yeah, it has this like nostalgia to it, like Casablanca, like this crazy nostalgia it's not even nostalgic, because nostalgic would mean that you were there before, but it's just there's something about it. And like you said, Jeff, like everything's just different. It's kind of like when you go to Japan a little bit and like you're in the city and everything's upside down and backwards, and it's just so strange to your five senses that it makes it really cool and fun.
Yeah. It feels old. It feels ancient in a way, right? Like, but then there's all kinds of modern stuff too, you know. And you go from town to city. Like you'll go through towns that are like very old buildings, and they have like little like street markets and stuff. And then you can go into like Marrakesh where like there's high-rise buildings and stuff, you know. It's everything in between. And you know, I really liked like the people. Like everyone was just happy and friendly and usually pretty cool with you. And especially if you're on a motorcycle, they're like, oh, because you're usually on a different type of motorcycle than what they'll be on. You know, they'll be riding some work motorcycle that's like 150 cc's, and they've got, you know, a bunch of stuff strapped to it, and they're doing work, and you're out on like maybe a big adventure bike or something, and they're just like, that's weird. So they see this, you know, this weird American or a foreigner, you know, all geared up on some spaceship looking motorcycle. So they're interested as well, you know.
Yeah, you always have those experiences of like the familiar and the unfamiliar, you know. I had a time I was riding across the desert. I was by myself. It was a little before sunset. And I remember thinking it looked just like Arizona. I was just looking around. I'm like, if I had just got dropped here blindfolded, I would swear I was in Arizona. And then I'm like, except for that camel right there. There's a camel standing next to the road.
Yeah, exactly. Or those goats in the trees, you know.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool tourist spot to stop, where the goats climb the trees to eat the berries, and there's farmers and stuff that'll let you stop and take photos. It's pretty cool. So everything's pretty rad there. I would highly recommend going there. You just got to be careful with the food.
And the tea.
Tea. Yeah, and the tea. I know that one well too. The tea is delicious, but you know, if they put big pieces of mint in there that's probably not been washed, you can get sick.
Yeah, so if it's not hot enough for long enough, it's going to be a memorable cup of tea.
Yes, it will be for several days for sure. So, but other than that, I think it's well worth the risk, and one of my favorite places. So, Jeff, what about you? Let's give your third favorite country.
I can't really rank them that way. Like, I just love them all. And you guys know I love riding in Mexico, especially Baja.
No way.
I spent a lot of time. Yeah, I know.
No way.
Spent a lot of time riding down there with both of you guys as well. But I just love it. I love it down there. I love this. For one, like Adam mentioned, it's close to home. The food is amazing. People are great and super hospitable. I've been with you guys where we've had an issue with a motorcycle or something, and people just want to help you. They want to help you figure it out, whatever it is. And they know a guy, or I think I was with Adam one time. We needed, or I was supposed with both of you guys, we needed to borrow a tool from somebody. You guys remember this?
Yeah, that was on the Triumph on Two Wheels episode where Adam and I, a quick tangent / segue here. We did an On Two Wheels episode where we did what we called the Baja 500, which was we had $500 between the two of us to cover 500 miles in Baja. So we took two Triumph Scrambler 1200 XEs and rode a section of Baja and tried to stay under $500, which we successfully did, and we covered 500 miles. But it all wasn't easy because in the behind the scenes, Jeff, back to you.
Yeah, so we got, I forget even what the issue was, but we didn't have the right tool with us. And so somebody stopped and they're like, here, I have this. And he had to leave or something. And we're like, well, you know, can we borrow it? And he said, yeah, just leave it in the bush right there. I'll come back for it later. You know, like completely trusting that these foreigners will leave his tool there. And of course we did.
Yeah.
But so that was in Baja, but one of my most memorable trips was on the mainland, and there's like up in the northwest corner, south of Yuma, Arizona, is the Altar Desert, and there's tons and tons of sand dunes there. And I did a story with riding across them with Jimmy Lewis and Johnny Campbell. And it was about 100 miles in each direction from Yuma down to Puerto Penasco. And about half of it each way was sand dunes. No trail, no GPS track, just a heading. And it was amazing. And typical things like you see in Mexico, like food and all that stuff. But we stopped this one time. I don't remember how we knew there was gas. We stopped at one of these places that you guys are familiar, where it's a house and a restaurant and a convenience store and a gas station. They have everything.
It's all of it, yeah.
An outpost.
Yeah, and so we pull up and we're told they have gas. We're like, oh, we don't. I mean, they don't have pumps, but that's not uncommon in Mexico. So they go, oh, go around to the back. So we go around to the back. I swear, this might be the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my whole life. We go around to the back of this restaurant, and they have gallons and gallons of gasoline stored in 5-gallon buckets, many of them without lids. And the ground is just soaked with fuel. And we're like, this seems really dangerous. Like, all this open fuel. And we got our gas as quick as we could and just got out there. Like, this place is going to for sure blow up one day.
That's crazy.
But, yeah, it was a super, super fun experience. And we didn't know how long it would take. We had packed all these snack foods. Like, we didn't know if we were going to do it in one day, if we had a problem or if we got lost or whatever. And it was really, really a fun trip.
Nice. Sounds like a Star Wars episode.
Yeah. Well, there were some times of hostility.
What about, like, have you ridden any other spots in Mexico, like further down south, like around Mexico City? Like, I've heard there's really, really good roads around that area. You've got you can go up to the volcanoes and up in the mountains, and I think it's very adventurous. I mean, I've driven a lot. I haven't ridden all of mainland Mexico, but I've driven through all of it, and man, stunning scenery. And there can be good roads and bad roads, but I would really like to explore that place even more.
Yeah, I did. I borrowed a KTM when I was in Mexico City one time, and you helped me with. And I rode in Mexico City, and that is an experience. Mexico City is really difficult to get around. The roads just it's just craziness. Like, to make a left turn, sometimes you got to make like 3 right turns or 2 U-turns or something like that. And it was.
Is that due to congestion?
But also like poor road planning. They're like, oh, they're just like, oh, if you need to go that way, you got to go through this alley under this apartment building, like all this weird stuff. And you're like, I would never, without Google, I would have never been able to figure it out. It was so awkward. But also, that's what I like about, riding in foreign countries, like in Morocco, where the signs are not in English, or in Japan. And that's what I like. I like that it takes some time to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
All the barriers, the language barrier, all of it. I love it all.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, that's Mexico for you. Let's go to Adam's middle pick, I guess you should say, because you're not, like we said, not like third and second, or not subpar at first, but we all have our favorites. Yeah.
Next pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
your next pick.
My next favorite pick after riding in Germany would be another European country, and that would be Portugal. So Portugal, the little country to the west of Spain, a lot of great roads out there, a lot of interesting countryside, lots of awesome, cool roads where you're like over the ocean and you can see, the waves crashing, and the weather is very temperate. The food's pretty good. Everyone's really nice. And, like I said, like we talked about going to Germany, when you're out of the major cities, there's not a lot of people up there. The road's yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The roads are usually pretty high quality in Portugal. They're they're pretty grippy, and they have nice corners and everything's laid out, and there's no real gnarly surprises of gigantic blown out pieces of pavement or anything like that. So it's just good riding, really good riding.
Portugal's just a great country. I mean, it's fantastic. It's if you're a tourist, it's nice because it's pretty affordable. Very
affordable.
Yeah,
for sure. I've ridden quite a bit through there. Like when we rode to Morocco that one time, we rode from Lisbon all the way through Portugal, through Spain, and then over to Morocco. But Adam and I went and rode some press launches there and had some extra days on our own and did some extra riding, and this is awesome, really fun. So
yeah, you guys have ridden at Portimao or no?
I have not ridden Portimao. I've been to Portimao, and I don't know if Adam, have you ridden Portimao?
I've ridden Portimao. Yeah, it's like, I think it's in the south end, I believe, in the south end.
Yep. It's southish,
and there's nice roads adjacent to the racetrack as well.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, there's even some like forested quasi mountain, not really mountain, but like hillside forested roads. Like, again, like that's the kind of cool thing about Portugal is there's a lot of, I wouldn't say it's as diverse as the United States, but there's a good amount of diversity in the terrain and road surfaces there.
Yeah. And again, the food is amazing in Portugal. I had one of the most memorable meals I've ever had, which was like a grilled octopus. I still think about that meal. It's probably been 15 years.
Yeah. Dude, remember, Adam, when we went and ate at that sandwich place and got the Francesinha? The most offensive sandwich ever.
What was that yellow sauce? That like it was like this mayonnaise sauce or something?
It was like a mayonnaise gravy. So they put like everything on the sandwich. So it had like sausage, pork, ham, cheese. It was all grilled, and then they covered the whole thing in like this like gravy sauce, and then put like a fried egg on top of it. Like it was gnarly. It was
rich.
It was very, very rich. You could not eat a whole one. And I tried. But we had to give it a go, and it was pretty dang gnarly. But I've ridden a part of Portugal maybe you guys haven't, which is the Azores, the island.
Oh no, yeah, I've never been there.
Yeah, I went to a press launch for the 801 Norden Husky, and they did the press launch there, and it was, man, what a amazingly beautiful place. Kind of chilly a little bit, not super warm, but lots of green. Just everything is super green, and it's a volcanic set of islands. And we rode up on this one dirt road, and we're going along, and we're hauling butt, and I was chasing Lyndon Poskett. Me and Lyndon Poskett and Jesse Ziegler from Cycle News, dude, we're just like pinning it, like going as fast as we can, like dicing it up. And it's kind of foggy, and you can't see like out into the forest. And all of a sudden, like the fog went away, and we were on this ridge that was barely wider than the road, and it was a cliff on one side and a massively steep hill on the other side. And the cliff side was the ocean, and the massively steep hillside was a volcano crater where there was a town and a lake inside of it. And it was just like this just crazy visual of you being on this point where like one side is the ocean, one side is a lake, and they're only separated by like, I don't know, 300 yards. Like not a very far distance. Wow. It was crazy, super crazy, but really fun riding there as well, but hard to get to. So I don't know if I'd recommend that spot for anyone.
Yeah, the Azores, they're way out in the middle of the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was like a stop.
How do you even get there?
Yeah, it was. We flew in, but it was like a stop off, a waypoint for Portugal when they were sailing back in, whatever, the 1600s and 1500s and all that. To get stores and supplies heading, out into the ocean, going west. So, but really cool place. Food was really good, very seafood based, but very delicious. So, and speaking of seafood based, that takes me to my next favorite, which is Japan. Japan is not a place that a lot of people might think of going and riding a motorcycle because of the insanely good public transportation that they have. But there was 2009. I spent 3.5 weeks riding around Japan on a bike for vacation, and it was one of the best trips I've ever had on a motorcycle in my life. So
What were you riding? What were you riding?
I actually rode a Versa 650. So the first generation of the Versa 650, actually. So I worked at Kawasaki at the time, and I decided, like, I had all this vacation time saved up, and my wife didn't have that much, and I was going to either have to use it or lose it. And so she's like, well, go do something you want to do on your own. And so I was like, okay. So I made this big trip to Japan, and my goal was to ride all around the big island of Japan. And so I borrowed a bike. And the funny part is that Kawasaki was very, there's rules. There's lots of rules in Japan, right? And so they wanted like a full itinerary of where I'd be, because they were like worried about me riding on the wrong side of the road, street signs that I couldn't read, all that kind of stuff. And so they were like, okay, my plan was to just wander through Japan. And they were like, well, we need an itinerary so we can check up on you. And so I was like, okay, so I made this fake itinerary. And then when I got there, they gave me the bike and they gave me a cell phone, a Japanese cell phone. And they're like, call us every night. Let us know you're okay. So then I had to carry my fake itinerary around with me and look at it every night and call them like, oh, I'm in Nagoya right now. Oh, it's great. And I'd be like somewhere else in the country. But the actual writing part of it it's awesome, because once you leave the big metropolitan centers, it turns to rural so fast in Japan. It goes from buildings and massive urban density to like you're out in the sticks, like very, very quick. And that's a really nice part about riding Japan, because you could go to any of the major cities, rent a motorcycle, and be up in the mountains in less than an hour. And I think
cool.
that's a really nice way to do it. And the roads are always really good, and the things you can find are just wild out there. So when I did my ride, I went from Akashi, where Kawasaki's plant is at, through Kobe, Osaka, Kyoto, and the Kyoto area was amazing. So I had a GPS and I would turn it off, and I was there for like 4 days. I turn it off and I just ride off and just get completely lost. And then once I was time to go home, then I turn the GPS on and find my way back to the hotel. And that was, I got into some mountains where I didn't see anyone for hours on a road, hours of really good, twisty roads with amazing scenery and just nobody there, And then outside of Tokyo is a mountain area called Nikko, and they have some of like the oldest temples there, and there's some roads that go that way they're amazing. It's called the Irohazakawa Winding Road, and there's one road that goes up the mountain and one road that comes down the mountain. It's one way. It's 48 turns each way, and each corner is a character of like an old Japanese alphabet. And so when you're going up, you're going through the alphabet basically. It's 48 up, and then there's an awesome lake, and then you ride back down. Really twisting, really fun roads. And then then there's the Japanese Alps, which is in the center of the country, that very, very rural towns with amazing like farmland and elevation changes, cold to hot, just really good stuff. So,
I never heard of that. Is that where the monkeys go swimming and all that?
That's up more north. That's in Hokkaido area for the most part. I think there might be some in some of the Alps as well, because they do get a lot of snow in the middle of the country during the winter. But that's where I had the greatest steak of my life, bar none. Cost me a lot of money accidentally. Long story, but excellent food, excellent people. And and I actually got a ticket in Japan, which was pretty funny. And the guy I was riding with, he missed a sign that said no right turn. We made a right turn in Tokyo. And I heard this whistle blowing, beep, beep, beep. And then we were at a red light, and I heard this whistle, and then the light turned green. We rode away, and the whistle went away. I was like, interesting. Get to the next red light, and the whistle starts getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And then the light turns green, and we go, and the whistle goes away. And this happened for like about 5 or 6 lights. And then finally, this police officer on a bicycle pulls up next to me, and he's just sweating, and he's just red-faced, and he's just like, yeah. And he starts yelling at me in Japanese, and I flip up my visor, and he sees that it's an American, and he gets all confused. And so he moves us off to the side of the road to give us tickets. And long story short, it was difficult putting all my American driver's license info into the pad on the ticket book, right? And so it was like 2 hours we sat there trying to get a ticket. And then the big boss came, and he told me, he spoke a little bit of English, and he says, you must go to jail.
The big boss from the police department?
Yeah, the big boss, like a sergeant or whatever, in the car. And he's like, you must go to jail. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, jail. And I'm like, I go jail, and I made like my hands on the bars. So he's like, oh, no. Police house. And I'm like, station? And he's like, hi, station. And I was like, oh.
Like, wow, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And so he's like, follow us to the police station. So he gives us all our paperwork back, and we're still putting on our helmets, and he drives off. And we don't know what the police station is. So we like break like all kinds of laws, catching him, like running red lights and stuff to get behind him at the police station. We go to the police station. My buddy has to stay outside. I go in, and it was like another 2 hours of them trying to write me a ticket. And then they finally were like, okay, here you go. And they finally gave me my ticket, and it looked exactly like my buddy's, just with the name different. And I was like, okay, great. And I had to go to a post office and pay the ticket. It was like $60, but it was hilarious. And my buddy's like, don't tell my wife I got a ticket. She'll be so mad. So it was like a secret the whole time. But I love the place. And of course, you've got all the food and all that stuff. So you can't go wrong going to Japan. It's awesome.
Tell us about that steak. Tell us about that steak some more.
Dude. That was an accident. So this area, they were like, you gotta eat the steak when you're in this town, Takayama. And I was like, okay. So I found a place, but it looked like a butcher shop when I walked in, and the guy's like, no. And he shows me on the corner, and they have tables with barbecues in the middle of them. And so you pick your steak, and you go sit down, and then you cook it. And he keeps showing me, he keeps pointing at the sign that says 1,500 yen. And then he's pointing at the steaks, and he's pointing at that, and he's pointing at that. And I was like, 1,500 yen. I think the exchange rate was like 105 at the time. So I'm like, that's like $15. I'm like, dude, that's a deal. So I like picked the biggest steak I can find in the display. I'm like, that one. The guy's like, oh yes, he's all happy. And so I go in, and I go to sit down, and I'm looking, and there's like 4 or 5 people at tables, and they're sharing steaks smaller than what I bought. And I was just like, oh, whatever, And so I sit down, and he brings the steak out, and every person in that place looked at me like I was a maniac. And everyone's just like, and like he's got it all sliced up. And so I cook it and I eat it. Then I go to pay the bill. I figured out it was 1,500 yen per some unit of measure. And I think it was per gram. So my steak was like, I don't know, it was like $350, $400.
Wow.
But it was worth it. It was still that good that I wasn't even mad. I was just like, okay, it was worth it.
I was like, hey, let me show you how it's done.
Yeah, everyone's looking at me like I'm just a psychopath eating that, big of a piece, but it was good. So go there, get the steak, don't make right turns when you're not supposed to, and you'll have a great time in Japan. So,
sounds
all right,
awesome.
Jeff, let's have your next one.
My next one. Okay, so my next one would be, this was a few years ago. It was China. And me and another guy, we went over with a tour company. It was for a story, Lotus Tours. I'm not even sure they're still around anymore. But I rode the Chinese version of a Ural sidecar. It's called a Changjing or something like that. And basically it's a Euro sidecar, just like they copied the tooling or whatever, and they're produced in China. And, you know, before we went, they're like, have you ever ridden a sidecar? And I'm like, yeah, of course I've ridden a sidecar, which I was totally lying. I'd never driven a sidecar in my life. So I was like, and I was a little nervous because this guy I was going with, he had driven sidecars before and absolutely hated it. He just said they're evil and their whole goal is to try to kill you. So I was like, okay, well, I hope that's not accurate. But I got this thing that was actually fairly reliable. And we rode from Beijing, which I am now I was probably expired, but I'm a licensed driver in China. To drive in China, you actually have to have a Chinese driver's license. So we spent the first day going to get our picture taken and going to, I don't know, whatever, the version of the DMV or whatever. And we did all these things and came back, had my Chinese driver's license, all in Chinese characters and everything, which was a very cool souvenir to have. Mm-hmm. And we visited different spots along the Great Wall, and it was so cool. We're in then you get outside of Beijing, and like you said, Dawes, with Japan, it's very rural. It's very rural. We would come into these places where at the time, they had not seen very many Westerners in these sort of out of the way little villages. So when we would roll in on motorcycles, take our helmets off, it was like we were the show. So we would gather crowds, and this guy that I was traveling with, Bo, he was a big guy. He's tall and just big, but also he had in a previous life, he had been a bar entertainer, like guitars and tell jokes and stuff. So we would pull up and he would tell jokes in English. Of course, nobody, he would tell jokes in English and then just start laughing. And then this crowd would just start laughing because he's laughing. They were just for one, they were just looking at him like, what is this? Like, it's this huge person. And then he would sing songs. He would sing That's Amore, just a cappella. And it was absolutely fantastic, combined with all of the things that we were seeing, you know, it was really, really a cool experience.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are the roads like there though? Like, is it worth it for the experience, or is it the actual riding good as well?
Well, you know, it's different in the sidecar, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not leaned over and, you know, doing all the same things. At the time, the roads were not awesome. I would say like a lot of it was, the roads were in, a lot of the stuff we rode was in disarray, disrepair. And, you know, like when you're in the sidecar, how you have this extra wheel. So you have to pick multiple lines, you know, and they're not quite as wide as a car. So there'd be a lot of times where you just have to drive either the motorcycle through a pothole or the sidecar through the pothole. And, but it just made it we weren't covering great distances. So the fact that it was pretty challenging made it fun, you know, made it a fun place to be. And you had to be really careful of like, the other drivers in China. It doesn't make any sense to us, but there, if you're on a back road, the person coming towards you, if they're passing in your lane, they have the right of way. So the car on the wrong side of the lane has the right of way. So it just encourages everyone to be on the wrong side all the time. So there are lots of times you come around a turn and there's a dude coming straight at you in your lane.
Wow.
And then
you have to get out of the way.
Yeah, and you have to go out onto the shoulder and get out of his way.
Crazy.
And also, I had one really spooky moment. It happened to be the last day, and we were coming back into Beijing. It was dark, and these things, the lights on these things are not awesome, and you could barely see. And I'm going along, and I'm on 2 lanes. It's a road where there's 2 lanes each way, and I'm tucked in just trying to see the road because it's really, really dark. And right next to me, there was I pass a full-size dump truck that's parked with its lights off in the left lane. I think it was abandoned. It broken down. They just left it. I didn't see it till it was about 6 feet from me. If I'd been in that lane, I would have gone under it.
Jeez,
But
That's crazy.
yeah, it was a very, very cool experience. I really, really enjoyed it.
nice. It's not. I haven't been yet, so yeah, I'll have to give it a go.
I had a little issue with some of the food because we went to some places where they were still mining coal, and I remember one day we were riding down this road and there's so much coal on the ground. It was just the dust. It would just come up like when cars would go by, this black dust would be on the road. And there was a little like stream next to the road and the stream was obviously black. And we stopped like 5 miles later for lunch and they wanted to serve us fish. I'm like, I think I'm going to pass. I'm just going to have the noodles today. Yeah.
That's funny. Right on. All right. Adam, let's hear this is your number one. Numero uno.
My number one pick and favorite place to ride abroad would be the country of Italy, which I'm sure all of us can probably agree is a solid choice.
It's a very solid choice.
Yes,
very solid choice.
The roads are awesome. The food is super awesome. The history of that country is really neat. And, again, a lot of diversity of terrain. You can be up in the mountains, you can be in the hills, you can be by the coastline. Like for a island
on islands.
Yeah, you can be on islands for a peninsula or isthmus or whatever it technically is. To have that much diversity in that small of an area is pretty neat.
I would agree. I have never not had a good time riding in Italy, and I've been to Italy more times than I know to count. And same with, I think, all of us. Like it's a go-to for press launches for a very good reason, right? It's just good riding. It's just really good.
Yeah. It's a really, really fun place to be. Yeah. Have you guys you guys have ridden racetracks there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's great circuits there as well, but, honestly, the street bike riding is even more memorable, in my opinion, than the racing tracks.
I think so. My favorite area to ride in Italy is outside of Bologna, where, where Ducati is, and then you've got Ferrari and Lamborghini, and there's these back roads where, like, you're going, and it's just super twisty and super fun, and there's, like, Ferraris and Lamborghinis being tested, and Ducati motorcycles, and the cops are just like, if you're in something cool, they don't care what you do. Like they do not care how fast you're going, what you're doing. They're just like, yeah, it's quite a cool culture for sure.
Yeah. And it's such like you just mentioned about Ferrari, Maserati being there. It's such a cool place for gearheads, because you can do all this cool riding and your destination could be one of the museums. I've been to the museum, the Ducati, and 2 of the Ferrari museums, and it's just such a cool way to like tie all this stuff together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really a gearhead's mecca.
It really is. They call Bologna the Valley of the Motors or whatever. And yeah, it is just a great destination if you are a person who loves, motors and engines, anything mechanical, and then that's one aspect. And then just literally the food, like just going to restaurants in that part of the world is just like, the food's phenomenal. We don't have the same Italian food in the United States.
No, we do not. We do not. We do not.
Definitely not. And all the, just stopping for just coffee and like a little snack on the roadside is like just such a like experience that you just have to do it. Like you just, it's just really good.
It's pretty special. Just what is considered fast food, like a quick panini and espresso. It's just, I mean, it's incredible.
Way better than Starbucks.
way better than Starbucks. Absolutely.
And everyone there is pretty friendly, pretty friendly, ready to help, roads are a little narrow. Can be a little bit narrow and challenging to get around a little bit, but at the same time, that's what kind of makes it fun.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I love Italy. I love everything about it. I have no complaints. Definitely a spot you should check out. So mine is another place that we do a lot of press launches at, and it's for a good reason, because it has great weather, awesome roads. It's basically like the California of Europe, and that is Spain. Spain, I think if I was gonna recommend one place in Europe for someone to travel and make sure they have a consistently good ride and experience, it would absolutely 100% be Spain.
Yeah, and they're just motorcycle crazy there.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. So you've got uncrowded roads. The pavement is usually unbelievable, super grippy, twisty, turny up in the mountains, and it's varied at the same time. There's different parts of the country that have different weather, cooler or warmer. But even if you go in the wintertime, usually you're never like super cold. Like I've been there in January and February, and it's still pretty mild and nice. So.
Well, you make a good point. California of Europe, and you'll go there, this time of year during the winter months in North America, and you'd be amazed how many people are flying in from England, from Ireland, from the north of Europe to get out of the cold and experience some California-ish weather in Europe.
Very much so, and it's. You have the really good weather, but you also have your money goes a fairly long ways there. It's not an expensive place for the most part.
You can definitely make it. Yeah, you can definitely make it affordable.
Yeah, you can make it affordable, and there's just epic places to go see. Like, there's a lot of press launches we go to in Malaga. And then you ride up to Ronda, which is this amazing mountain town that has this like cool stone bridge over this big ravine, and it's just beautiful. And all those roads around there are just like epic. You know what I mean? Like, and we've been there so many times. Like, I'll see like a car commercial, and I'm like, oh, that was shot over by Ronda. You know what I mean? Like, you could recognize the corners. We've been there enough times, but it's because it's so good. It's just such a great place. And then you've got the food is great. Like we said, your money can go a long ways there. It's solid. It's a very solid place to be.
And actually, and flying in from the States, you can find pretty decent airfare. Not everywhere we've mentioned is that way. Sometimes, it's expensive to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other thing. Go ahead, Adam.
That's a great point. Like travel, I mean, some of these places we're speaking about are easier to get to than others and more affordable than others. Like LAX Madrid, like that's a very common flight, and there's also other routing, LAX to Newark, Madrid. So there's a lot of options to get to a place like Madrid, Spain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's easy to get to Madrid and Barcelona. And then there's, small, cheap commuter flights from all those places they're all short. They're like an hour long, you know what I mean? Like to Malaga or to Bilbao or wherever, just a quick jump and you're there. And they're motorcycle crazy in Spain. So finding a motorcycle to rent or use is, it's easy. Tons of stuff. So, Jeff, let's get to your last choice.
Well, okay. So my last choice was is France, but in particular, I mean, I've done other trips in France, but I had this one trip, I don't know, a number of years ago, riding we started in Switzerland, so just briefly we started in Geneva and just briefly in Switzerland, down into the south of France, and it was like I mentioned, Italy being a gearhead country. Well, this trip was the ultimate gearhead. It was like 10 days. It just so happens that my ride coincided with, and the roads. So the roads there are fantastic because you can just look up roads they've used for the Tour de France. Mm-hmm. So pretty much anything that's a good cycling road is a good motorcycle road. And so you find and the tour tends to pick places out of the way, so they're just less traveled roads anyway. And it was fantastic. For the first few days, we traveled the same route, just coincidentally, as a vintage car rally, like similar to like the Mille Mille. So like all of these vintage cool cars were stopping in the same places, see all this really cool stuff back in the back roads. And so we did that, followed them for a couple of days, and then we got way down into the south of France. There's a road, I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically like California's PCH. It follows the coastline, the very, very south of France.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes through places like Saint-Tropez and Cannes and Nice into Monaco. And along that strip, you know, that's an expensive place to be, like Saint-Tropez. I can't remember how much. We stopped for lunch and had like just a couple of Cokes. It was like $30. I was like, we got to go. But it just happened to be that this was the weekend of like Vespa World Weekend, which is similar to like Ducati World. There were along the south coast, there were thousands and thousands of Vespas. And it was, and you know, the Vespa crowd, they're crazy. So people are dressed up in weird stuff. They dress up their scooters. And it was just fantastic to see all of these other people sharing the road. I mean, it wasn't so long that it became, you know, too annoying or anything with too much traffic or anything. It was just such a cool experience. And then after that, following through these places, went into Monaco. And that was super cool. Go to the casino, do all that stuff. But it just so happened that this time we were there was literally just a couple of days after the Formula One race. So the course was still set up with the K-rail and the fencing and the curbing and all that. So we had to do laps on the Formula One course.
Oh, that's awesome.
On the motorcycle, like through the tunnel. It was so cool.
Wow.
And all of it was unplanned. It was just like the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing.
Wow.
And it was just the coolest motorsports 10 days of, you know, of that. And then at one point, we had stopped for lunch in a town I think was called Grenoble, and I was just looking at the map. We didn't have a planned route. It was just follow the map. We were watching weather. It happened to be some rain in the area, and so we're sitting having lunch in this town of Grenoble. And I go, holy cow, we are really close to Alpe d'Huez. If you guys are familiar with that, it's one of the most famous hill climbs in the Tour de France. They don't use it every year, but they use it a lot of years. And it's like the craziest hill climb. I forget how many turns it is, but it's more than I care to think about on a bicycle. And so I said, we should go just check out the road. So I think we decided to just stay at the top. At the top is a ski resort. And so we were going to come in the back way. That's what we decided. We come in the back way and go to the thing and then come down the twisty part that they use in the tour in the morning. Well, it just so happened this weekend was also the weekend they were doing some sort of bicycling event. It was a fundraiser for something. There were hundreds and hundreds of people bicycling this road, staying in the village. And so it just made it like, it was off season. Obviously it was in the summertime. So it made the cafes were full enough, you know, it wasn't too crowded. And to ride that road with all these bicycles on it, it was just amazing. It was such a cool event, and I will always remember that. It's like such a special trip.
Nice.
Sounds awesome.
It was.
That's really good.
Surprise!
Yeah, I like that. I like that section. You know, the south of France, the Riviera, like really good roads, really fun. But yeah, not a cheap place to be. Like you said, you $30 for a couple of Cokes. I remember we ordered a couple Diet Cokes and a Red Bull and some sort of snack right outside the Grand Casino in Monte Carlo. And it was like 180 euros or something. It was like so insane. We're just like, this is not my world.
Yeah, for sure.
Not my world, but cool to see. So let's get into those are like rad choices. I think every one of us would agree that all those picks are solid and you should add them to your list of places to go. But what about like worst, we'll say like places you might want to avoid for riding? And I'll kick it off, which may seem like a strange place to avoid for motorcycling because it's a neat place to visit, but Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, go to Dubai, go to Abu Dhabi. Just it's a sensory overload in the sense of like the cities versus the stark desert. Super rad, but every road is straight and is narrow. There's speed cameras everywhere, and there's only one good road in Abu Dhabi called Jebel Hafit, and it's like a 4,000 tall foot mountain. It's got 60 turns. It's like 7 miles, and that road is rad because it was made by one of the royalty in the country to drive his supercars up to this resort. So the road is perfect. It's like a racetrack, but it's the only road there, and so it's not really worth it. Like the people are awesome, the food is delicious, the scenery's rad, but if you're going to go to Abu Dhabi, just take a car. What about
sounds like good
Adam?
advice.
Yeah.
For me, I don't really have a country that I don't like riding in. I guess if I had to pick something, and it's kind of strange because, like Jeff said, he enjoys riding in Mexico, and as do I, just because it's so close to get to. But even though I like riding in Mexico, I also sometimes don't like riding in Mexico, and that's kind of because you go through these towns, and they can just be kind of dirty with like trash and littered and telephone poles everywhere, every which way, and it's kind of cute and nice, but it also it kind of looks not super aesthetically pleasing.
Kind of bums you out.
Yeah, so
especially
it's
when you're there.
bag.
You're there and you're like, man, you got like this place is so beautiful, and then people are people, right? They tend to litter, and so it kind of screws up the scenery a little bit.
Yeah, like you'll be riding down there and there'll just be like a huge pile of trash just like sitting on the side of this nice vista, and you're like, what? Like, come on,
Yeah.
So it's a love-hate relationship, more love than hate.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
No, I get that totally. And there's also which doesn't happen as much now, but the shakedowns, right? You get pulled over by the police, and they want money, so that's another thing that's not rad about Mexico. But once you get used to doing that, and you get used to the dance, you can just do the thing and usually get out of it. So so what about you, Jeff? Let's hear your place that you don't recommend riding.
I would not recommend Russia.
Well, I mean, for multiple reasons right now, for sure, but
just
let's hear it.
I did a ride. We picked up BMWs in Munich, and we rode through Poland and Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia, and it was all awesome. Like every single day, you're like, it couldn't get any better. And then when we got to Russia, literally the moment we got to Russia, so we crossed over the border from Estonia into Russia, and the cops are like, where's your Russian driver's license? You got to have a Russian driver's license. We had only ridden across the border. So now we got to pay a fine for being in Russia without a driver's license, a Russian driver's license. And so we go round and round with these guys, and it's $100 each. We were there. It was me and this guy we used to work with, Bo, and we were there working. And so it's $100 each. And we're like, it's like, seems kind of steep, but Russia's relatively expensive anyways. So, we go through this whole thing, and we get back on the bikes, we start riding, and we're on our way to St. Petersburg. It's only about 2.5 hours from the border to the city of St. Petersburg. And we get pulled over again, not too far down the road. And it looked like they were waiting for us. And so we're like, those guys at the border radioed ahead that these guys on BMWs are on their way, and they got some money. So, like, as soon as they saw us, they lit us up. So I don't even remember what the violation was, or what the claimed violation was. We were being pretty good citizens because we'd already had to pay once. We're like, oh, we need to, keep the expenses down. We can't keep paying. So anyway, we pay again. And again, a third time, there was we were up the road, and there was a you've probably seen it. Like there's like a police stand next to the road, and so as soon as they saw us coming, they walked out, stopped us, pulled us inside. And it's funny. Bo and I had this kind of funny dynamic. He was a big guy, and he would sometimes kind of lose his patience with people, and I would be like the voice of reason. I'm like, well, Bo, just relax, let's calm down. This will be a lot easier to deal with if we're just mellow. So we go to they drag us into this little police stand. It's not really a station, it's just a stand. And again, they want $100. So it's been $100 every time. So now third time, another $100. And we're trying to get out of it. We're like, hey, we weren't doing anything. Why are you pulling us over? All this stuff. And I start losing my patience. And then one of these Russian cops, he's got the gun. He's got like a rifle strapped across the front of him, and he comes over in front of me and like leans, like pretends like he's getting something off the table, like paperwork. And it's literally the end of his gun is pointed into my face. He doesn't have his hands on it or anything, but you're just like, whoa. So now I'm getting pissed, and now the dynamic changed. And then Bo's like, hey, you got to mellow out. Like, he's like, this is not a good place to lose your mind. I'm like, I don't care. I was so pissed. So anyway, that's the thing, like the shakedowns and all that stuff. And then, because we were there for work, funny side story, when we came back and we did the T&E, I put on my T&E, like we had to pay $300, and I put extortion. And like the corporation we work for were like, yeah, we don't pay extortion. Like, I know you had like a real expense, but we can't have it written down that we reimbursed you for extortion. And they said, you got to figure out something else. And they go, all right. So I changed it. It said tourist tax. And they said, all right, we can pay a tourist tax.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, that's a bummer. Like, it seems like there's so much land in Russia that would be rad, but then again, if you're feeling unsafe the whole time, not awesome. So real quick, let's go over like maybe somewhere that you'd want to go to. Jeff, you've been to a lot of places, so let's start with you, because your list is probably smaller than mine and Adam's.
No, it's not true. The more places you go, the more places you want to go. The more places you realize you haven't been. In fact, I'm going to make this my official notice to you, Dawes, since you're my boss, that I'm going to need some time off in August. Because I'm planning a trip to Slovenia and Austria.
Oh, nice.
And Croatia. And then back. Plan to catch the MotoGP race at the Red Bull Ring.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. I've been to two of those three that you mentioned. Austria, of course, is rad. It's very much like Germany. Slovenia, super, super rad place. If you can swing it, like maybe we can set it up, go to the Akrapovic factory and take a tour. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Unbelievable. So, and the town near there, Ljubljana, super rad, like insanely cool city. It's a walking city for the most part. But super beautiful, has a river running through it. Amazing. So
yeah, it's on my list of places to visit while I'm there. I didn't realize Akrapovic is so close to Ljubljana.
Yeah, it's pretty close. So
good.
Neither.
Yeah. So I'll go with mine. Vietnam. I want to go ride Vietnam. It's tropical. It looks awesome. It looks adventurous. It looks rural and untouched. It looks just super rad. And I'll go back to, there was a Top Gear episode probably 10 years ago now where they rode small motorcycles through Vietnam. And even Jeremy Clarkson, the notorious motorcycle hater, at the end of that trip was like, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever done. And for that guy to give thumbs up to something that is on two wheels instead of four says a lot about that place. So that's on my list.
Yeah. Vietnam is on my list as well.
Well,
I thought you rode in Vietnam, Jeff.
No, we did a trip to Thailand a few years ago.
Okay.
But Vietnam is on my list.
Yeah, I've ridden in Thailand too. Thailand's rad. Jeff's ridden in Thailand, but Vietnam looks epic. So, Adam, let's hear yours.
Well, Mexico, love, hate. We'll go back to the love. And, even though it can be challenging some spots, aesthetically with the litter and stuff, there's also really nice spots. But I think it would always be good to log some more time and see something a little bit different and, go. I heard there's these roads up there where people like race street bikes on, like almost like a Pikes Peak. And I would love just to like explore those roads and see what that's all about, and just check out new places that I haven't visited.
Mhm.
And that's the great thing about Mexico is it's close. It's easy to get to. You don't have to fly 12 hours to get there.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
Flying to Mexico City, what takes 4 hours maybe from LA? If that, 3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 4
Yeah.
hours sounds about right.
Not far at all. So cool. Well, I think that's going to cover our likes, our dislikes, and places we want to go. As always, put your comments down below. We want to know where you've been, where you really like, where you want to go, and where you think we should go. So engagement always helps our podcast. So hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you on the next one.